Titanfall is one of the most heartbreaking franchises in FPS history because of how awesome it could have been. Don't get me wrong, the first two games were both great, but lackluster sales led EA to largely abandon the IP, and choosing instead to focus on the surprise success of its Battle Royale spin-off Apex Legends. Titanfall 2 launched back in 2016 and left things in a perfect place for escalation and evolution, but since it was smack dab in the middle of Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, it unsurprisingly didn't do very well in the sales department. Respawn Entertainment completely shifted focus to Apex Legends, a free-to-play game that existed within the Titanfall universe, and featured many of the same guns, mechanics, but without the wall running, without the jetpacks, and with the addition of unique characters that gave it a hero shooter vibe. Apex Legends was a massive success and outperforming EA's expectations and becoming Respawn's main focus for the next 3 years. Since then, Respawn has become an A-list studio working with Lucasfilms to create a number of Star Wars games, including a still untitled first-person shooter that is rumored to be some kind of successor to Republic Commando. But what about Titanfall? Despite the insane success of Apex Legends, the main Titanfall series has been put on an indefinite hold while Respawn focuses on their more successful projects. However, a number of things have been leaked in the last few months that seem to point a third Titanfall game being in the works, although not the way you may think. We're going to do a lot of digging in this video and a lot of speculation, but if we end up being right about this, Titanfall 3 may actually be closer than you think, just not in the way you were expecting. In order to predict where Titanfall is going next, we have to understand why it failed in the first place. The original Titanfall was the very first game from Respawn Entertainment, a studio made up of former Infinity Ward employees who left the company after a falling out with parent company Activision. Following the launch of 2009's Modern Warfare 2, there was a giant legal battle between Activision and the two heads of Infinity Ward that ended with both of them being let go. In response to the news, a giant percentage of Infinity Ward employees left the company, and a number of them teamed up with Infinity Ward's original leaders to create a brand new studio. Given the fact that this was during Call of Duty's golden age, a new studio made up of COD developers was huge news, and the studio quickly signed a deal with Activision's main competitor, EA, and got to work on their first major project, a multiplayer first-person shooter meant to give COD a run for its money. Titanfall was meant to be a futuristic FPS with silky smooth gameplay, addictive progression, and a fast pace with some key additions that would set it apart from COD. You could double jump, you could run on walls, there were a bunch of awesome gadgets that you could use, and there were gigantic mechs that you could call in and completely shift the tide of battle. Titanfall was a completely unique experience, and it was absolutely worth the hype. So why did it flop? Well, the gameplay may have been fantastic, but just about everything else had issues. Aside from a handful of major technical and server issues that were present on launch day, Titanfall was a full-price $60 game that was multiplayer only, which was a very hard sell. The steep price tag for a brand new multiplayer only IP ended up shooting EA and Respawn in the foot because nobody really wanted to take a risk, and then on top of all of that, the game was never released on the PlayStation. Instead, it was exclusive to PC, Xbox 360, and Xbox One. And since this was 2014, Xbox's reputation was pretty awful. The Xbox One was flopping so hard, a full price multiplayer only game obviously wasn't going to sell very well on that console. The technical issues, the high price tag, unfavorable platform selection resulted in Titanfall being a financial disappointment for EA despite the positive reviews. Thankfully, it managed to sell just enough to justify a sequel, but that's where things got pretty tragic. Titanfall 2 was released in 2016 and was an all-around improvement over the original. The single player campaign was absolutely fantastic, and the multiplayer was improved upon in every possible way. Plus, the game was released on the PlayStation 4 as well as the Xbox and PC, which greatly increased the potential buying pool. So what went wrong this time? Well, despite the rave reviews and extensive marketing, EA made the galaxy brain decision to launch Titanfall 2 right between Battlefield 1 and Call of Duty Infinite Warfare, two of the most hyped games of the entire year. It truly didn't matter how good Titanfall 2 was, because it was never going to be either one of those FPS behemoths, especially now with the insane amount of hype surrounding BF1's return to a classic setting and Infinite Warfare's inclusion of COD 4 Remastered. Titanfall 2 may have received the best reviews of all three games, but it sold the worst by a long shot, dramatically missing EA sales expectations and causing the publisher to pretty much abandon the series. It wasn't until the Battle Royale trend started in the late 2010s that EA even thought about allowing Respawn to revive Titanfall, and even then, they made sure that Apex Legends was as distinct from Titanfall as possible. In the eyes of EA, Titanfall is a tainted brand. They're 0 for 2 with Titanfall games, and even though Apex Legends has been a great success, there are millions of players that don't even know it's related to Titanfall, and EA likely wants to keep it that way. It's one thing to release a sequel to a disappointing game, but releasing a second sequel after 2 disappointing games is career suicide to a big publisher like EA, and after a few years, the message was clear: Titanfall was out and Apex Legends was in. A few months ago, we reported on a massive leak that suggested Apex Legends was getting some kind of single-player FPS spinoff that many people were saying was actually going to be Titanfall 3. In those people's defense, I guess it kind of makes sense. A job listing from Respawn made explicit references to a new single-player experience set within the Apex Legends universe, which technically could mean Titanfall, but upon further investigation, we shut those rumors down almost entirely. It's not surprising that Respawn is now referring to the universe as the Apex universe instead of the Titanfall universe because of the insane differences in success the two games have enjoyed. Even though Apex Legends wouldn't exist without Titanfall, the free-to-play battle royale is way bigger than Titanfall ever was. So for the sake of marketing and keeping everybody on the same page, it makes sense that Respawn is now referring to the entire universe as being based around Apex Legends. That being said, I still don't believe a single-player game set in the Apex universe is Titanfall 3. It simply wouldn't make sense for Respawn to start working on a third Titanfall game when Apex is exploding and they're already hard at work on 2 different Star Wars projects. What's more than likely is Respawn is working on some kind of single-player content for Apex Legends, perhaps a full-fledged campaign, or maybe just a handful of missions for each legend in order to flesh out their backstories. Last year, Respawn Entertainment explicitly said they were not working on a third Titanfall game at that time, but with the success of Apex Legends, it makes far more sense that they're simply expanding the game's potential as opposed to secretly reviving a franchise that put them in a financial hole. You have to remember that despite our opinions on the first 2 Titanfall games, EA still saw them as a financial disappointment, and as long as they're still paying the bills, Titanfall 3 likely isn't going to get off the ground. So when it comes to making single-player content within the Apex universe, EA knows it is far safer to add a single-player content to Apex itself instead of making a third Titanfall game that might still sell better than the last 2. Granted, I think Titanfall 3 would do pretty well solely because of its association with Apex Legends, but I still think a third official Titanfall game is at least a few years out, and I certainly don't think a single-player Apex game is Titanfall 3. However, there is something that leaked not too long ago that could point towards Titanfall 3 coming in a different way. Not too long ago, it was discovered by a data miner known as Crawl Rindo that 9 Titanfall 2 maps had been quietly added to Apex Legends game files. At the time of this video's production, Respawn has not responded to any questions about this, nor have they even acknowledged that the maps were added, but this isn't the kind of thing that could happen accidentally. As it stands, 9 of the multiplayer maps from Titanfall 2 could have been added to Apex Legends, but they're currently inaccessible to the player, and it's completely unclear why they were added in the first place. Some people have speculated that they are likely being used for an LTM like capture point or control, but I'm actually not sure I agree. In case you were curious, the 9 maps in question were Exoplanet, Angel City, Homestead, Blackwater Canal, Colony, Eden, Boneyard, Crash Site, and Rise. So you Titanfall 2 fans are probably stoked to hear those maps are coming back, but as far as the actual gameplay you'll be utilizing on those maps, I have my own theory that you may not be expecting. Like I said, some sources have claimed that these maps will be used for an Apex Legends LTM, but given the layout of these maps, I'm not sure I entirely agree. I think there's something totally new in the works. So what does all of this mean? Why are Titanfall maps being added to the game code of Apex Legends? They're obviously not being used right now, and Respawn hasn't said anything about it, so what's the big deal? Well, what if I told you Respawn is actually planning a Titanfall revival within Apex Legends? Over the last couple of years, Respawn has experimented with a bunch of limited time modes in Apex, some of which featured respawns and actually played more like a traditional PvP shooter. The game mode control was basically Titanfall, but without the advanced movement, bots, and titans, and it was a huge hit for that exact reason. So what if I told you Respawn is going to take control to a step further and basically make Titanfall multiplayer into a game mode within Apex Legends, complete with a lineup of classic Titanfall maps to play on? If you actually think about it, Apex Legends already has nearly identical gameplay to Titanfall 2, so by tweaking a few game settings and limiting the map selection, Respawn could basically make Titanfall 2.5 and release it within Apex Legends in order to keep the player base unified and maximize the number of people playing it. Or they put it into Apex Legends, and if people like it, they can use that data to decide whether or not they should make a new Titanfall game. Imagine booting up Apex Legends, and when you go to select your game mode, there's an option called Titanfall Throwback, or or something along those lines, and basically it's just Titanfall's multiplayer, but recreated in Apex Legends. You may think I'm being a crazy conspiracy theorist here, but remember, Respawn has already started adding Titanfall maps to Apex game files without saying anything. That's not something they would do for no reason, but unless they're planning something like this. What else would those maps be used for? So imagine Apex gameplay on Titanfall maps, and perhaps with the addition of custom classes, bots, and maybe even Titans replacing characters' ultimate ability. I mean, heck, maybe even just keep the Titans out of it and just let you use your current Apex ultimate abilities instead. And again, you may think I'm reaching here or just making things up, but all of the pieces are there. Respawn has already started experimenting with non-BR type game modes within Apex, and now that they're quietly adding Titanfall maps to the game files, they're clearly getting ready for something. Respawn knows how much we love this franchise. They know that there are millions out there who absolutely adore the Titanfall franchise. Shout out to you, Iniquity. But they also know that EA isn't going to give them the funding to do a full-fledged sequel to a series that's already disappointed them twice. Respawn employees have stated on Twitter and streams many times that Titanfall will never leave their legacy, but they can't make a full-fledged game right now. So why not meet the community halfway and do something that keeps the spirits of the series alive without hurting the success of its current direction? By adding some Titanfall style game modes to Apex Legends, they can satisfy the people who want Titanfall 3 with a free-to-play multiplayer that feels like the good old days of TF1 and TF2 while keeping EA happy by continuing to support their main moneymaker. I wouldn't be the least bit surprised if sometime in the next year or two, Apex gets some kind of bonus game mode that's team versus team with respawns enabled, and all of the maps are from previous Titanfall games. Maybe it'll include Titans, maybe it won't, but I'm absolutely certain that Respawn wants to satisfy the core Titanfall community and remind them why they fell in love with the franchise in the first place. Think of it like Titanfall 2.5 instead of an official Titanfall 3. Then Respawn may be able to use the success of the modes as justification to greenlight the first full-fledged Titanfall game since 2016. It's a bit of a long shot, but you can't tell me it's impossible. Respawn has already started experimenting with Respawn modes in Apex Legends, and they're secretly adding Titanfall maps to the game code. They're obviously preparing for something huge. So while I don't think Titanfall 3 is coming in a traditional sense, I'm about 85% sure we're going to be getting some kind of Titanfall style multiplayer mode within Apex Legends in the next year or so. Perhaps a 10-year anniversary event. I mean, the first Titanfall came out in 2014, so they're coming up on the universe's 10-year anniversary. Whatever the justification may be, I'm really hoping we're right about this one, because I would personally love to play Titanfall again, even if I have to do it through Apex Legends. But yeah, guys, that's gonna wrap it up with this video. Are you excited to see if this happens? Like the video, share it out to all of your friends, and don't forget to stay tuned to the channel if you want to stay up to date with all of the news, leaks, and rumors for video games. Thanks for watching. This has been Wes, and I will talk to you guys again soon.